the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic.
New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and fantastic to have Angus Brown joining us for the first time. How are you, Angus?
I'm good, thanks, Paul.
Great. Maybe we could start you a little intro of where you fit into this big wide world of tech, food tech, innovation.
Yeah. So Ārepa, we, for probably the past 10 years, have been researching at the intersection of nutrition, primarily out of New Zealand and with plants, neuroscience and food tech, and probably more recently, the application of AI across those three core pillars or domains. And within that is spitting out an agri-tech play and a biotech play and a nutraceutical play. And so so I'm one of the co-founders, and my role within the business is to manage the innovation and the pipeline between now and what we're doing in 3 to 5 years' time.
Exciting. Well, great to have you joining us. Big thank you, of course, also to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Workday, and Gorilla Technology. We really appreciate their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast and all the support that they give across the tech and innovation ecosystems here in New Zealand. Well, let's get started sort of delving into some of the New Zealand news and happenings, some global, and then really looking forward to getting some insights from you around Ārepa and the Ārepa story. But yeah, first up, Friday was the High Tech Awards in Wellington. Always really inspiring to have a gathering, and especially the scale that the High Tech Awards have gone to. This year was the 30th anniversary. I think the first year they managed to pull together about 100 people, and that was, I was chatting to someone, involved, or hearing about someone involved with kind of getting it kicked off and trying to find people to come and so on. Now it seems to be always a sellout event. They keep getting bigger. I think half the people flying on Friday from Auckland to Wellington were probably going to High Tech Awards.
Where was it?
It was at the, trying to remember the name of the venue. Don't know my Wellington venues very well.
Waterfront or
on the waterfront. How
many people?
About 1,400.
Okay, yeah.
So the venue name will come back to me, but it was interesting because there was a bunch of people that I saw even just in the lounge, and then on the flight and so on. Nicola Willis was on the same flight down, and then she was she spoke there, and then she was on the same flight back the next day. But there were all sorts. There was representation across sort of the political sphere a little bit, a very brief hello with the leader of the opposition and stuff. So there was lots of interesting people there. But overall, I think the big takeaway is just how inspiring it is to hear what's going on across the country. What's going on in the broader kind of tech ecosystems that we don't necessarily hear about every day. Even if you're listening into the New Zealand Tech Podcast, we don't get everything that's going on. There are just so many things happening, and so really really exciting, encouraging. There were definitely some comments to call out the politicians in the room. Probably a little bit more so pointed at the current government, which I guess is that's the nature of these things. They show up and they will get a little bit of shade thrown at them for some of their things, and of course that's going to be quite relevant when we've just had a budget come out and there have been some areas where there's not the same amount of funds, or things are being done differently to how they've been done previously. So that was interesting. Couple of sort of standouts. Sir Peter Beck was awarded as the Flying Kiwi, which is I guess a kind of a very high honour for anyone within the New Zealand tech world. But he's off, around the world somewhere. So there was a sort of recorded video from him, and that's certainly not a unique circumstance with these things. And then the winning company, Sios, really fascinating. So only around about 4 years, yet their revenue seems to be cranking up. My impression, and I'm trying to remember, there were different data points I took from official announcements and commentary, sort of suggested that this 4-year-old business is generating hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, and their focus seems to be on kind of autonomous vehicles of varying kinds for military use, defence use, and the British Army seems to be their kind of linchpin customer at the moment. So they're doing manufacturing out of the UK. But one of the things that really stood out to me is the fact that they're up against these defence contractors that have been around for a long time. Yet they're only 4 years old, and they're getting the trust to get this sort of engagement. And there was certainly, some commentary there around the number 8 wire, I guess, approach in New Zealand, and our ability to be able to, muck in, take ownership, and get things done and delivered. And a time window of 6 weeks was mentioned on at least one occasion. So if someone goes to Sios and says, "Hey, I need this
in 6 weeks,"
they're saying in 6 weeks we will we'll get it sorted for you.
Yeah.
And so
fabricate
what a real commitment to
impressive
to action and delivery, and just being able to innovate and figure out how to deliver. So they actually had some coverage on TVNZ, on news, I think in the last roughly 4 weeks, and we'll see if we can put that up in the show notes if you're interested in seeing that video interview. And there you can kind of see that they're involved in autonomous boats as well as flying drones. I know they've got vehicles that can fly for hours and hours, which we're not used to with drones, because actually that's what's needed in the use case. So they move from electric powered to battery, diesel or petrol, or whatever the is needed there, but to a normal engine there rather than electric motor. And they must be able to really deliver to be picking up this sort of business and growing at this pace, and to have won that top award. Now, of course, there's going to be some debate around the fact that they're in the world of defence, and that their stuff's being used from a military perspective. And we hear some of this with pushback around Rocket Lab, for instance. But I guess you look at at any army, you could sort of debate whether everything that they do is right and ethical, and it depends where you sit and what your connection is. But I would have thought that most Kiwis would probably feel that the things that the British Army gets involved in by and large are very much defensive, rather than out there trying to do nasty things to people on an offensive basis. But I think every military has also made mistakes in their time, so I can understand these sort of topics.
And if they're saying they're not putting weapons on it, and they're designing it without it, and it's to a government like the British Army, you'd think integrity would be reasonably high. And I think we need to innovate and understand what's at the bleeding edge of that anyway, just from a New Zealand defence perspective. There's
a win there, right? If New Zealand actually has defensive technology, that's homegrown,
Yeah.
that could well up our.
We don't have the American budget,
or
the Australian budget.
Our opportunities to defend ourselves, should we need to, and we don't have much budget at all in the scheme of it.
Probably the most exciting startup in the from a probably just pure mass views perspective generated online would be Anduril out of the States. I reckon about 4 years old. The guy started Oculus Rift and then sold it to Facebook. He's started now a weapons tech company, and he's getting all these massive contracts, and he's creating drones and intelligence systems and probably a whole bunch of other stuff. It's a pretty dynamic time at the moment.
Yeah, I think that, there's a flip side as we move to more innovative technology in defence, because, okay, can it fly autonomously? Yes. Well, can it kill autonomously? I guess becomes the, potentially the next part of the puzzle. And I think probably most of us would or a lot of us would have some discomfort with that. So we could probably delve in a lot deeper on that one, but we've got a few other things today, so we'll keep moving. News through, and this has been previously reported on, of a data center opening in at Whenuapai Air Base in West Auckland. Now we've heard a lot around Microsoft, AWS, and so on. These commercial data centers opening in New Zealand and how good that is for New Zealand. Haven't really heard a lot around what's happening from a government perspective. So this data center is being developed by the GCSB, which is our government spooks, I suppose, and the Defence Force in collaboration. And it's a $300 million high security data center. It's been in the planning for best part of a decade and construction since 2022, and now seems like we're reasonably close to to that actually opening, if you can say that around what was considered a secret spy agency kind of data center, because I don't think we're going to be choosing to put our data there, but I'm sure the government will be putting some data about some of us
data prison
in there. So so no, it'll be interesting to see what comes through, and how that plays out, how much they're able to share publicly. A little bit of further reading. I was curious, what's their redundancy and so on. You don't want all your critical national data all in one place. Does seem as though all of these sorts of things have been well thought about, and I don't know the answers to all of the questions, but looks like that's happening. How important do you think it is, Angus, that we take that responsibility and have this sort of data within our nation, rather than it sitting offshore? We don't have control.
Well, certainly no expert, but my hunch would be, if the data centers are owned and housed in New Zealand and owned by New Zealand, then surely our data sovereignty and our protection would be improved. And then yes, certainly when in my world, I recently caught up with Mark Piper, who's the CEO at Planet Food, and he was talking about data and the fact that these new Crown research organisations are going to come through to this kind of ultimate bioeconomy, are going to pull together huge amounts of huge data sets on the bioactives and plants, and like New Zealand's native flora and fauna and agri commercial worlds, and also native worlds. We want to house that stuff in New Zealand ideally as well. And then we don't want, what Mark talked about is, we don't actually want to bring in offshore AI tools to work that data. We need to actually build our own AI agents, sounds like that's the term, to wield this data ourselves. And I just think it's really fascinating. And in the next 10 years, it's going to be completely different to where we are, have been the last couple.
Yeah. Look, I think this is a positive thing. It's a large investment, but in the scheme of it, very, very helpful, I would think. That said, we can't, be thinking that we can't also use the sort of multinational US internationally owned data centers either. Those are obviously going to be really important for New Zealand, and it's really important for business that we get it right in terms of how we secure our data, because there are numerous bad actors who would like to pick up New Zealand's intellectual property and run away with it, as has happened in the past. Now, on the AI front, I just had an email through earlier today. 1NZ have launched their AI trust report, and this is interesting. I haven't been through all of it yet. I'll explore it in more depth, but they've been exploring what the opinions and attitudes are, towards artificial intelligence within a New Zealand context. And one of the highlights is that there's widespread use of AI. I think probably we all know that. Their report came up with 77% figure. Now I'm not quite sure how you break that out, but that those that, whether they're using it or not using it, there is this sort of broad feeling around concerns about trust. And I guess you can break that down, other categories, whether we have trust in data privacy, whether it's being used in fair and appropriate manners, whether we trust what might happen in the job market. So I think there's a large belief that there are significant benefits in AI, but those concerns around the negatives. So I'll delve into that a little bit more. And if there's any kind of big things that are jumping out, we may pick that up on a future episode. What I will do, if we've got a link, we will put that in the show notes as well. So for folks that are wanting to see that, or the SciOS video, duck across to nztechpodcast.com, and you'll see those links there in the post. I might have to double check on the availability of that report, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to link back to that. I guess AI is kind of a pretty important tool for any organization today. What would you say is the sort of the thing that stands out the most to you, as the founder, chief executive at Ārepa, that stands out to you in terms of its importance for your business?
Yeah, I would say we use AI. We get the most out of AI with digesting vast amounts of PDFs, which are the free text versions of published research.
Right, so huge amounts of research you've got to
consume. So we're doing like constant systematic reviews of all the published evidence towards a whole array of things within our business. So it might be nutritional systematic reviews from a health effect with new ingredients or synergies with other ingredients, but it could be from a food tech perspective, where we're looking at best ways to extract or richest sources of this particular compound, or thermal stability of this component under acidic conditions, which are in beverages. So it's been really, really useful. It doesn't give us the expert opinion that we're deeply seeking, but we have the human intelligence checkpoint within our business of whoever the domain expert is. They review the literature, check the reference links, do their own manual one, and then come back and make a call. And at the moment, it's like sometimes it's bang on, some other times it's quite off, and it actually comes down to the art of how you do the prompt and how you instruct the AI tool that you're using to get the best type of result. So, for example, what we've learned lately is that if you tell the AI it's an expert in a particular domain, so you are the expert in neuroscience, nutrition, and say psychiatry. Give me a systematic review of all the medications and depression out there, and tell it, and then look at our molecule and do a comparison.
Yeah.
And by honing in the AI's bandwidth and energy that it's got to a portion to your particular prompt out of the billion other prompts it's working, it just cuts out a lot of crap for it to not access, and you get a richer, deeper response. But you could just do that in anything. You're an expert in finance, you're an expert in sustainability, you know?
Yep.
So that's how we primarily use it.
That's good. Now, also on a New Zealand front, Wellington-based Litmaps startup there have secured $1 million in funding to expand their research mapping tool. Their platform helps scientists visualize and track academic literature with the idea of sort of streamlining discovery and collaboration in global research communities. And they've been going since 2016, and they're now serving over 2 million researchers globally, across well-known institutions, the likes of Harvard, Stanford, University of Cambridge, amongst others, and operating with a goal to accelerate impactful science by helping them figure out the gaps in knowledge and minimize their sort of unnecessary work. Yeah, this must cross into your world, right?
Yeah, I'd never heard of them until you sent me the link. I'm incredibly fascinated, and I'd love to speak with them if we can visualize the interactions and the trends within the nutrition and neuroscience paradigms. We're keen as to chat.
Now on the sort of global news front, we've had some reasonably significant events in the last few days. So OpenAI acquiring IO Products, which is the hardware startup co-founded by Jony Ive, and a lot of our listeners, maybe most of our listeners, would know that name. Jony Ive, having worked closely with Steve Jobs over a long period within Apple. I think they probably started, off the top of my head, if I'm getting it correct, with in terms of their collaboration after Jobs sort of rejoined Apple on the colourful iMacs and things like that, through to the current devices that or more recent sort of devices, iPhones and so on. Now Jony Ive sort of has stepped out of Apple in recent years to do his own things, but a pretty significant move, I think, on OpenAI's front, and this is a multi-billion dollar investment. I think if you put it in New Zealand dollar terms, north of 10 billion New Zealand dollars. So really significant, and the talk is very much about inventing or collaborating on this what's next type device that's been bounced around for years that won't be a phone and won't be this and that. It's going to be a completely different form factor, completely different device. I don't know whether that thing's a unicorn that we will never find. I'm kind of curious.
It's probably a phone for now, and then they'll eventually get there. But they'll probably just do a nice phone.
Yeah. So that seems like
it's interesting.
A reasonably big deal. So there's that happening. We had Google I/O last week, which is their annual kind of big event and unveiling of all their newest things. AI mode within Google search, which is now US wide, and all sorts of bits and pieces in there with supporting more complex sort of queries, virtual try-ons. I think those that watch some of the stream, being able to try these different kind of clothes on visually with sort of AI enablement. They showed off something of Project Astra, live camera screen sharing kind of capabilities being built into Gemini Live, which I guess we've seen sort of prior demos of that sort of stuff. Google Beam, which has evolved into Project Starline, if I've got my terminologies right here, which is it's a little bit hard to describe, having not actually seen it in person, but what it looks like is an immersive video experience that makes it feel as though the person you're interacting with is actually right there in the room with you, with the way that it that it operates and how it looks. It's got multiple cameras at different angles, and I guess you can move your head around and you kind of get a different view as you move and so on. So a kind of a 3D immersive kind of video call experience. And then I think the one that's probably had the most attention on social was this VO 3, which is their AI video generation, and we'll put one of those examples or a link up in the show notes there as well. We've seen some of these things in the past, but Google bringing this sort of tech through, it's looking pretty impressive. I think you look at the demos. Often the demos do look really, really good, and then when push comes to shove and you try and get it to generate a video that suits what you might need for
it's because of the prompt. It's the prompt.
The next Ārepa commercial there, Angus, or what have you. You want the giant Ārepa bottle that's bigger than I don't know, Burj Khalifa or something, and I don't know. There's there's so many sort of possibilities for these tools, but even with the VO3, which some of the output does look amazing. I'm reading that these things are still challenging to kind of get the right results, and you still get some weird oddities. We're not so much seeing the 7 fingers on one hand and so on, but I think there's still a journey to go. But as I guess Google get into these things and build them into their subscriptions, and the same with other players, these tools get more and more mainstream and just become a part of the workflow for more people, right?
And I think Eric Schmidt said that AI is now underhyped, which means maybe we're actually not taking it seriously enough, and the rate at which its exponential learning capabilities, it's not like it's 10 years away before we get the best one. It could be like next year at the rate of knots that some of these guys are going.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I when I heard that, my immediate sort of response was no, surely not. But I guess there are varying degrees. We kind of get the high levels of hype, but then there's I guess the reality checks where we haven't necessarily sort of seen the impact. And I think there are some levels of impact that probably will, surprise us, partly because with new technology and innovations, you kind of see them coming, but you don't necessarily have or see the impact. But then you get to a point and you look back and it's like, oh, this is
Can't imagine without it.
Yeah, how could we operate, right? It's like,
idiots.
GPS driven, mapping like Google Maps, right? Or Ubers and things like this. It's just part of our life. But if you look back to, when a lot of us were growing up, it was
brick phones.
None of these technologies were around. When I was at school, there was no such thing as a youngster with a mobile phone. I think technically they'd probably been released in the in the US. Can't quite remember now what year. We got our first mobiles in New Zealand, but they're kind of car phones or attached to the car or carried around in a suitcase. So yeah, there's I guess a bit of a reality check sometimes that we see these things sort of normalize, but we maybe aren't joining up all the dots to what the future holds, with these pieces of technology and how much change they actually will bring in one form or another, reasonably quickly.
Yeah, I think there's like the novelty effect, and you go, oh, that's funny. Like, who did that like really quickly? And then you kind of dismiss it. But hey, maybe you do need to, accept that is the true like kind of take on the data and make your next decision.
Yeah. And as well as those, announcements, Microsoft, they were unveiling some things at Build, AI agents that can control, I guess, your Windows apps on your behalf, using the model context protocol, that these agents, will be able to automate, a whole range of things that you might do in front of or with your your desktop or laptop apps or what have you, managing files and all sorts of things. So
is it the paperclip going rogue?
Yeah. Clippy's
right.
gone nuts. Maybe drank too much of the AI Kool-Aid, and okay, now on to Ārepa. Maybe tell us a little bit more. I think listeners will be curious to know how Ārepa kind of came about. I think a lot of listeners will have had a taste of Ārepa, the brain drink, and some of them may be regular customers, but there'll be others who maybe don't have so much knowledge about what you've been doing, where you're working to sort of fit into the market, and especially around your future, because your future isn't just around the drink, as we know it, and also you've got your newer flavor, the sparkling ginger peach, which is probably a little bit of a shock for some, because we thought Ārepa only did the blackcurrant, right?
Yeah. So I guess for those that don't know too much about us, apart from maybe seeing us in a supermarket or a gas station, we're a brain food technology company. I used to sell in.
What does that mean, brain food technology?
Well, if you so slowly, the brain, we exist to make brains work better. That's our core purpose. And food technology is the job that I had before I started this business, which was working for the New Zealand government at the Food Bowl, which is like a $30 million modular food factory. And so we apply that towards the brain, which in the context of nutrition is like, neuroscience. And so that's been like the purpose from day dot. And that was when I was selling V for Frucor, and my co-founder, Zach, was on the other side of the world in the UK, designing a drone that could pick up a shipping container for a like the Russian version of Elon Musk in the UK. He started the company Arrival, and it was huge, and then it kind of dropped off when shit hit the fan. And so him and I partnered with one of the world's top neuroscientists in terms of published research cited, Professor Andrew Scoley, and he, for the last 20 years, kind of broke the back of nutritional neuroscience interventions, and he headed up the Centre for Human Psychopharmacology at Swinburne University. He's now gone back to head up neuroscience and a similar field at Northumbria in the UK, which is where he's from originally. But he was a gun for hire for the likes of Nestle and GSK and Unilever and you name it. He was in Nature for some of his research, Nature magazine, and found the healthy polyphenols that are in chocolate and what makes dark chocolate healthy. He did that with Mars like 20 years ago.
I always want to hear more about what makes chocolate healthy.
Yeah. So don't we all? And so we briefed him and said, hey, and at this time, over the course of 6 years, left working, selling V, which just, I couldn't help. I didn't want to sell caffeine and sugar into mass New Zealand. I actually wanted to make a difference because I'd lost a friend to suicide and grandparents to brain-related illness. And I thought, why can't we actually make something that's good for you, but backed by science, like clinically researched in humans, has got a felt effect and doesn't really need caffeine. And so we briefed this neuroscientist. He said, look, it's going to cost like 40 grand. And we were like, holy smokes. And Zach Stad chipped in the angel investment for that. And then we got this 6 months later, this, thick, couple of centimeter thick dossier of evidence towards these primarily 3 key ingredients, which was blackcurrant, and a particular variety that we call neuroberry, which is a plant variety, right? Our investor owns co-owns with Planted Food Research, and pine bark extract and L-theanine. And so we kind of bottled that up. And for the last 7 years, we've been undertaking placebo-controlled human clinical research on this formula that you can pick up at your local supermarket, primarily at University of Auckland for the first 4 published papers. And then our 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th will come out of Planted Food Research. And it's just been just happened to be that way based on the timings of some of these studies. We've got a couple of studies away in Australia at the moment. So what made us different is that we, out of any other drink you could pick up on the supermarket shelves, we're actually applying a lot of human clinical research into the finished product to see whether we could actually show that it did something. And those studies, people can look them up, and we've found statistically significant improvements to aspects of mood and mental performance, and are showing more recently a molecule in our neuroberry blackcurrant prevents the breakdown of your naturally occurring dopamine and other neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine in your brain. And this mechanism kind of mirrors, a mechanism used in pharmaceuticals for depression and anxiety. And so we have stumbled upon this from our deep research, and not only in human work, but finding small molecules with Callahan innovation, doing guided fractionation and extraction work to find this thing, because there was a signal in blackcurrant, and that's why we've been sticking with blackcurrant for so long, because it's the only plant food ingredient in the world that's been proven to have this mechanism. There's no other berry that does this kind of mechanism on your dopamine.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's kind of where our core IP sits. So it's like we've found the next caffeine without the side effects, and we've got the utility patent for its use. And so we're looking at how can we breed next generation blackcurrants. We're looking at extraction methods to be able to put into a capsule, because that's the highest format need state.
Right.
Otherwise they'll have to drink, one full bottle of our performance drink, our full flavor blackcurrant drink, to kind of get that mechanism happening. It's a lot of blackcurrant
And not everyone probably likes.
Not everyone, and that's what we've realised, and that's why we launched this next one. We're like, actually, to stay relevant in beverage, we actually need to innovate a lot faster than what we have done in the past, and that's because we've just applied so much science and IP towards this, and that's got us, a step on the international stage with large multinationals. But this economy is tough. Beverage is hyper competitive, and the innovation is, fast moving. So we thought, okay, what should we do that's outside of blackcurrant that can give people a bit of an uplift in the afternoon? And our professor had almost written the book on ginseng in terms of the totality of its evidence out there for supporting things like fatigue, and wrote kind of a big document on it. And we looked at that and we found a good supply of it at the right level of bioactivity and thought, yeah, it's quite cool. And it paired well with this ginger beer flavor we were working on. And we figured people kind of like ginger, and can we make it low sugar? And so that's this product uplift that it's on the table here. And that's now available in most New Worlds and supermarkets across the country, Woolworths, and online. And for the last probably couple of years, we've been the number one functional beverage in terms of revenue per SKU generated in most of the main accounts. We've grown to exporting into Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong. We've been accepted into a global accelerator in San Fran called Mister, which is backed by big corporates like Danone and Givaudan. And with this molecule finding, we're kind of looking at this beverage business in Australasia that generates, a decent amount of revenue for us, helps to pay for our science, but entering into new markets, beverage might not be the format, because our problem, which we've found here in New Zealand, is that we actually can't talk about the clinical research that we've done in our product under the ANZ food code.
And so where you kind of came unstuck with the Commerce Commission?
No, it wasn't Commerce Commission. It wasn't Commerce Commission. It was EMPI, who's the regulator of the food code. And that was why we got in trouble, because we were kind of bullish on our published research and we wanted to share it. But you have to, and we're actually happy with this food code, and we've learned our mistakes. And the only difference to the consumer on the packaging, which is what the main issue was, our packaging, is just a tiny plus on the front of our packaging. It's still the same product, and but
you've got to have some detail on the back.
You just so we've done human clinical research testing different subjects. We've done 38 healthy females. We've done people over the age of 55. We've done elite athletes. We've done sub-elite athletes, and we've kind of found all these like really interesting effects. But to do a health claim in New Zealand, you have to do 2 studies with the same cohort with the same primary effect studied. And so we've just got this mosaic of really interesting evidence that doesn't quite fit the framework for which the New Zealand Food Code allows us to. But we're still, the only beverage you can pick up that's got evidence out there in human clinical research. And so, that's kind of we've been spending time. But so we found that, okay, it's harder to market our science in beverage. But our supplement business, which kind of ticks along online and does really well offshore in markets like South Korea, and we think the US, has got we're regulated as a dietary supplement, and we can actually talk about our science there. So we're now converting and kind of using step change technology to create kind of our next generation version of a brain powder and a brain capsule, leveraging this new molecule discovery that we around how we affect your dopamine, to create our export-led format for the world. We'll still have a beverage business, but the beverage format might be a phase 2 or 3 in that export market once we've gathered that, because you need 20 million to keep fueling a beverage play, and it's hyper competitive. Whereas you might only need 2 million to launch a supplement play in a market like the US, for example. So that's really our take, and we're just super excited and grateful, and looking forward to releasing some of these new beverage products that we think Kiwis are ready for, and then later on in the year launch these new supplements that the world will be ready for.
Great. What's been sort of the biggest surprise in this kind of startup journey for you over the last few years, because it's not an easy sort of straight path where it's all mapped out at the beginning and everything works exactly as you expect.
Well, we thought we had the supply chain of blackcurrant sorted from a scalability perspective, and at one point we were buying, the kind of lion's share of New Zealand's blackcurrants, more than Ribena, but then over the course of COVID, vitamin C rich foods, immunity, blackcurrants have that, and then just a couple of poor seasons from a weather perspective. The northern and southern hemisphere supply chains of blackcurrant doubled. The commodity price doubled for us basically. Ooh. And although we had an investor, we needed to buy more, and we needed to let him sell at his peak price, and we internally had planned for half that, and so we couldn't sell a $14 beverage. We're just selling a $7 beverage, and the market can't afford it. And the science that we think, and the cost of our full flavor blackcurrant that's on the market now, the performance one, we think that should be literally priced at $9 based on the R&D investment, the IP, the genuine effect, if we can say that. And we've got a health claim submitted now, so hopefully that'll roll out in the next 2 months. So there was the pricing, and our COGS were probably the biggest surprise. The second one was probably just the I would say scaling, and then losing focus on what was the priority, and then just the whole economy tanking after that, and having to take a check and do a restructure to stay alive. That was probably the biggest surprise and shock, is doing that for the first time, which was pretty gut-wrenching, because you love everyone who joins your team because you put a high bar to be able to join, and then suddenly you got to let them go, and it's like choosing one of your kids.
Yeah.
So that was pretty surprising and challenging. Outside of that, from a positive surprise perspective, we, along with a handful of other Future Food Tech Aotearoa members, which are kind of an independent group of all of the leading food tech startups and companies in New Zealand, flew over to San Fran to present at this kind of 3-day duo conference. One was led by Mr., which is all the big corporates like Givaudan and Danone. And the next day was Future Food Tech San Fran. And it was really awesome to see us Kiwis kind of hold our own on the global stage as interesting innovations that the world's large corporates see as, amazing, interesting case studies. And a lot of us got featured on some of the bigger keynote talks. And a lot of us now are still in, now post-NDA discussion with a lot of the top, say, 10 food and beverage companies or food and beverage ingredient suppliers on the planet. And, there is zero funding for NZ Food Tech in New Zealand, in general terms. And probably what's the biggest surprise also would be that food tech funding globally is at a 10-year low. So, the last time was 2014, 15, and the funding that's been pumped into all these protein plays, alt protein, dairy, meat plays, and then have them tank, is just eroded all of the cash that there's probably about there's 100 companies in New Zealand that could do with a spare million or 3 to just keep achieving what they're trying to achieve, and some of them have got some really awesome innovations, and it's just but hoping that might change with some instead of headwinds, what's the other one? There's a tailwind. I've never had that before.
Yeah, well, all the best on that front. Some listeners will be curious to know sort of what have you raised sort of so far in terms of capital.
Well, we've raised I think about 7 million, and we've done $9.5 million years, and we're now really trying to focus on bringing profitability into the business, and it's been working in the trading business, but we spend $600K on pure R&D a year as well, so we're pretty heavy on that front. And patents and filing patents globally start to go up, but what we think is something, what we think we've got is something really exciting and worth investing in. And I think that's kept us alive the longest in the startup beverage functional space. There's been a lot in our 10 years that have come and go because it's bloody tough, because these big monsters like, Coke and Frucor just have the budgets and the supply chain and the marketing to convince mass New Zealand that their stuff is good. Whereas it's internationally owned crap that, causes spike to your glycemic index. Half of it.
So you're suggesting there's quite a difference between, say, a product like Ribena and Ārepa?
Yeah, but there's also a lot of good New Zealand-owned companies that are creating better-for-you products out there that more availably found, say, Farrows. And I think, there's this ecosystem that we just need to kind of go and think more about supporting local versus, big corporate.
Yeah, and look, I think there is that move towards healthier food, healthier drinks, which you're on the right side of that from what I can tell. So
trying.
That's really encouraging. Well, really appreciate having you on the show. It's great to delve in and get a little bit of a picture. I guess part of what we're doing with the New Zealand Tech Podcast is to look a bit broader than the usual kind of digital tech type things that we have in the past. And so, great to have you on and contributing to that discussion.
Pleasure,
I hope
thanks.
We'll be able to catch up again in the future and delve in a little bit deeper. But all the best for what's next. Big thank you, of course, to our show partners as usual. Workday, our new partner. Great to have Workday joining. 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll catch you on the next episode. If you have been watching the live stream, which tends to be across LinkedIn, you can follow myself on LinkedIn for that, across YouTube, X, and Facebook. Do make sure you're also catching the audio through your favorite podcast app, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you, and vice versa. If you're listening to the audio, then track us down on those video platforms. But thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you again next week. All right, see ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.